I thought that when I started making money, it would cure all of my money fears. And instead, I just had more money to be afraid with. From having those high money months, feeling so chaotic, not knowing where everything was going, having this really expensive business to run, I have no free time. I'm really exhausted. And I was just getting burnt out and I wasn't enjoying myself. I have to trust that I was doing the best with what I knew at the time. And those quote unquote mistakes, those were guiding me to learn better, to know better, and to do better in the future. It's like the mess being the message. So it's like those things taking me to the next level and the next expression of my work, because that's exactly what it did. Hello, my love. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast here on YouTube. I am going to ask you to take just a moment before enjoying this episode and go and hit the subscribe button. It not only helps the show, but it helps the channel. And I only want to continue to bring you incredible content and beautiful video content here on the YouTube. So just take a moment before enjoying the episode and hit subscribe. Thank you. Hello, my gorgeous. Welcome to another episode of Natalia Benson, the podcast. This is going to be a spicy one today. I'm excited. So we're going to talk about 3 money mistakes that I hope you never have to make. And I actually want to talk about this from the vantage point of money mistakes that I have made. I had a mentor once. We actually just did a session and I told him a money mistake that I'd made, which I'm going to talk about in this episode. And he was like, never tell anyone that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to tell everyone that because why? I don't need anyone, especially you, my loves. I don't need you to think I'm perfect. And I don't want you to think you need to be perfect either. And I think so often in our culture, there's especially within the realm of money, it's like there's this idea that if you're an expert in something, which I just don't align with that word, if you're an expert in something, you have to have some kind of perfect formulated relationship with it, with whatever you're an expert on. And I think what can happen with a lot of women is then we can sort of shy away from, well, if I'm not perfect with this thing, then how can I have any kind of ownership to talk about it or to own it and to share and to speak on it? And so that's why I'm very open about the things, the mistakes that I've made, the aspects of my relationship to money that are not so perfect. I started talking last year on the podcast about a lot of things around like credit card spending and overspending. Actually, I was looking at our stats this morning and the overspending episode that I did back in January, you babes loved that one. Like that one seemed to just really resonate and really speak to you. So that's really special. And I think that we need less shame around these conversations and more loving accountability and honesty because you don't need to be perfect with money. I'm definitely not perfect with money. And I think, if anything, these like being able to be more open and being able to be more honest about this stuff, it's an unlock because the only way to ever like change and transform anything is if you can be honest. And I also would like to think, my loves, that that's one reason why you perhaps resonate with me, especially if you've been with me over the years, is really because like, you know that I'm not perfect. I'm very open and real about a lot of my mistakes and things that I'm learning along the journey, or mostly I would say most readily, I definitely share things in hindsight. I'm definitely not one of those people, especially having a Capricorn ascendant, where I want to share things like in real time that I'm going through. I feel like I need to alchemize them on my own. And then when it makes healthy sense to share them and they can actually be of use to you, then that's really why I share, and then the place that I like to come from. So, with that being said, without further ado, that's really what we'll focus on today. Like 3 money mistakes I hope you never have to make. And I'm going to give some really powerful examples of journeys of spaces and places that I've been with my money that I don't want you to learn the hard way. But of course, you're on your path. You will learn the perfect lessons for you. And let's get into it. So before we start, I think I mentioned this in the last episode. I am really excited just to pull a card for every single episode that we're doing for these solos. So the card that I pulled for this episode today is the moon. So we actually pulled another major arcana, which is really beautiful. I think why this card makes such perfect sense for what it is that we're talking about today about money mistakes. So in astrology, there is the second house of money, which is like your seen relationship to money. And then there is the eighth house of money, which is your unseen relationship to money. The second house is how you earn, it's how you generate. Your eighth house is how you receive, but it's also where you store deep shame or deep unhidden aspects when it comes to your finances. And what's so powerful is that the second house is ruled by Taurus, which is very fixed, it's very forward. And then the eighth house is ruled by Scorpio. So it's more of like the underworld, the unconscious self, the deep psyche. And the moon card is actually Pisces ruled, but I feel like it's also speaking to that more eighth house side of our relationship to our finances, because the moon is where we house things that we don't want to look at or things that can stay hidden in the personality. And so I invite you just for a moment, my lovey doodles, before we lovey doodles, oh my God, before we dive in, I want you to think about what are 3 money mistakes that you feel like you've made that you maybe hold shame around, or that you hold some kind of like weight when it comes to it. It could be debt. It could be what you feel is like a missed opportunity. I'm going to be quiet for just a second and just like let that bubble up for just a moment, and let's just be with it, whether it's one thing or it's a few things. Probably came to you pretty quickly, but let's just take a deep, deep breath in through the nose into the belly. Exhale, let it go. Really intentional. One more time. Deep breath in through the nose into the belly. Exhale slowly, let it go. Exhale to the mouth. Especially if anything came up somatically for you focusing on that, I want you to do that breathing while I'm talking, and breathe and focus your energy and your oxygen to that part of you, or to that place in your body where you might be holding that shame, holding that tension, because money is an emotional experience. That's why I think astrology is so remarkably intelligent to describe it in the way that it does. The second house is that seen, forward facing, earning. I work, I create, I do. And the eighth house is this quiet, yet deeply powerful, all encompassing, and even controlling aspect of our money. It's so powerful, just like Scorpio energy itself. And what we don't allow to come through our emotions, which is also very Scorpio, very Pisces, what we don't allow to come through our emotions stays stuck in the body. And we create patterns from those places of stuck energy. So that's important. You can breathe into this. You can do EFT tapping. You can do EMDR if you have money trauma. You can do, I love EFT for money stuff. You can do hypnosis. My favorite hypnosis app for money is called HypnoCloud. You can get it on the App Store. You can work with me inside MWMM. We work with the two sides of the coin with money, the spiritual, astrological, energetic, because that is important. You need that just as much as the structural, which is that more second house energy I was talking about in astrology. To earn, you also have to have a healthy relationship to receiving, which is in the eighth house. To generate in the second house, you also have to have a healthy relationship to money and to your self worth, which is both second house and eighth house. So these are all just food for thought. And let's go through this. Like, yeah, is it going to be a little bit crazy for me to tell you some of this stuff? Not maybe crazy isn't the word, but it's definitely confronting. So some of my eighth house energy might be here with us today. But I want you to learn from my mistakes so you don't have to do these things, because I wish I knew sooner and I would have done things differently. I'm fortunately in a wonderful financial position in on a lot of levels. And yet I know it could be so much better if I had made some better choices, but those were my lessons to learn. So I'm going to do one more deep breath into my own self and my own heart and my own belly. If you want to do it with me, deep breath in, exhale, let it go. Okay. So, number one, thinking making more money would solve my money problems. So, something that happened for me in the business that I have now. So I went from making zero money. Like in my 20s, I was like $50 in the bank account was a good day. I thought that was, yeah, I thought I was like doing great with that. So it's so crazy to think. Like I lived in full blown financial chaos. I would literally like day before my rent, I would be like, oh, I have to pay $600 for rent tomorrow. What am I going to do? And I don't even know how I did it. It was crazy town. I had one job for a couple of years. I DJ'd at a bar on Thursday nights. I made $150. Like I was just living in self-imposed insanity with my money. And so that's where I'm coming from is like, I would avoid it. I would steer clear of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in number 3 that I'm going to bring forward. But like, it was crazy chaos. I didn't want to open my bank account. I didn't have a savings. I generated at like a very, very low level. Like I just didn't really want to be bothered basically. And frankly, I was just afraid. So, over the years, figuring things out, really everything that I teach now, which I had to learn by going through many a dark night of the soul financially, I literally stepped into this iteration of business when I was about 31 and I started making courses and I started to invest in myself with mentorship. I'm not going to get into all those deedly details right now, but I just really stepped forward and just got moving because I was just so tired of the chaos. So I went from like barely making $2,700 a month to like 10xing that to even like I'm thinking like some of my highest months that I've ever had to some months making high 5 figures and low to mid 6 figures. So it was like going from Nothingsville and a little bit of self imposed insanity, chaos, and avoidance to then having a business over the next couple of years from probably about the age of 31 until I was in my mid 30s that was generating, like I said, every so often high 5 figures, low to mid 6 figures. So I was generating a ton of money at times. I This is so hard for me to say, and this is really why I started to build my money system and what I teach now. Thank God my dad was still alive then. I had a good accountant in my corner. But I was in the space and place of my life then where I was generating so much freaking money and spending so much freaking money. And a lot of the money that I was spending was just figuring out how to run a business. I spent a lot of money, not only on mentorship, masterminds, team, things like this. But I also spent so much money on just lifestyle stuff, which I'm going to talk about in number two. This is that's what my mentor told me to never tell anyone, but I'm going to tell you, babes, because again, I want you to learn from my mistakes and from my experience so you don't do it. But here's what I'll say. I thought that making more money would solve my money problems. No, managing money and having a clear, clean, organized relationship to money on the internal side of things, which is emotional safety around money, and then also having a semblance of organization, that is actually what solves money problems. Not making so much money, because here's what happened for me, especially when I got into this business specifically. I thought that when I started making money, it would cure all of my money fears. And instead, I just had more money to be afraid with. So I just spent a lot of money. I found ways to almost like get money away from me to get myself to a place where I felt safe and stable. And when I started realizing that and recognizing that, and also seeing how ancestral that was for me, like my parents' relationship with money, my dad specifically, his high levels of scarcity. I even had a really powerful conversation with my mom recently when I was home visiting her. And she literally said, she and I were just discussing my dad, and she was just saying, Tally, like he always thought that like having a certain amount of money or having a certain amount of money saved or invested would make him feel safe. But he didn't really feel that way until the end of his life. And then he passed away very soon after. My dad was a Scorpio, as many of you know, but money is so freaking emotive. And I'm going to repeat this. It's like I thought having more money, having high money months was going to solve this fear that I had, but instead, it actually just made me more afraid because it was almost like I had more to lose. And going back to my first thought, I'm so grateful that I had my dad around. I had a great bookkeeper, and I just had mentorship around me that was like, it is not about the money you make, Natalia. It is about the money you keep and the money you manage. And my mom used to give me that advice too. She'd be like, it's not about the money you make, it's about the money that you keep and you're able to hold. And so, what I had to learn the very, very hard way, and this is something I see a lot of business owners and a lot of women who come to work with me, because what happens? We're usually drawn to people, whether we have a conscious awareness of this or an unconscious awareness, but we're typically drawn to people where we feel like they're going to have an understanding of what the frick we're going through. And maybe they've weathered a storm that we're currently in. So a lot of women who find me, especially who work with me in my one-on-ones, they literally have figured out a way to generate, but now they're figuring out how they freaking keep their business costs and their expenses to a manageable level. And then they actually start to do something with the money that they're making. And that requires you to have a system. So I feel on so many levels, while I'm so grateful every day for the position that I'm in, for the business that I have, I don't make as much money as I used to, but I feel more safe and more stable, more proud of all of the systems and the organization that I've created from having those high money months, feeling so chaotic, not knowing where everything was going, having this really expensive business to run, to then taking things to the true basis of what business do I actually want to run? What do I actually want to be doing with my freaking time? And a couple of years ago, when I was making well into, this was actually the only year that I scaled to almost $1 million in a year. I think I was about $70,000 short of having $1 million year. I had a mentor then named Taylor, and I had so much going on. I was working my little Katukas off and I was exhausted, and I was like, frankly, just not enjoying myself. And she was like, well, what business do you want to be in? Like, what do you actually want? And I was like, well, I want a business where I have time freedom. Right now, yeah, I'm generating a ton of money in a month. That's beautiful. I'm generating 3 to 4 to 5 times in a month than I did in most years of my life. And yet I have no free time. I'm really exhausted and I'm just doing the most. I had like 5 different offers in the business then. And I was just getting burnt out and I wasn't enjoying myself. And so that single question from her was so powerful for me because I really got to see, well, what do I want to be running? What do I enjoy? What do I want to be doing? And even though the business doesn't generate at that level, at least not right now, I also think the reason I was generating at that level at that time, there's a lot of reasons. I think it was also a very different time culturally. It was a very different time economically. It was a very different time algorithmically. And these are all, I take full accountability. These were some things that I think were setting me up to be in the right place, right time, is really why I'm mentioning those things, not as like any kind of scapegoat. But I also just think that I was in a place and space in my life where I just felt like everything was on me. I felt like that a lot in my relationship. I just felt like I need to carry things in this way. It was just the season that we were in at the time. So I really anchored into my masculine and I just was like, I'm just going to go, 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 and generate, 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 generate. And I did not have any kind of organization. I had no way of tracking. And from that mess came my message around the personal finance system that I built, because that really comes from me being in another form of financial chaos. I had financial chaos when I was making nada mucho, like really not making much money at all. And then I also had financial chaos when I was making a lot of money. So finding for me this middle way that's rooted in organization and structure and really answering the question of what business do I want to be in, meaning what also lifestyle do I want? Because I would venture to say that for so many women, I can't speak for all women, of course, but I don't know that many of us want to be running a massive business and teams and all of the things. Again, I'm speaking probably more to the women here in my community. For me, I know that I've wanted a business that pays me well and that is fulfilling and makes me feel like I'm doing my mission here on this earth. Like even me doing this podcast, that's part of what I'm here to do. My astrology confirms I have a lot of yap. I have a lot of yap in my chart. So I'm definitely here to speak and definitely here to bring message, but also looking at other parts of my astrology blueprint and my chart. I'm also here to like root into the spiritual and yet structural side of money, both for myself and then also to share that and provide value through that. So that was a tough one because when I go into some of the moon, some of my shame around that is like, dang, if I had been organized sooner, if I had known things or not avoided things that felt intimidating, like investing sooner, I would be in likely an even better financial position. And yet, and I say this out loud to you, my loves, whatever's coming forward for you about the money shame that you felt into at the beginning of this episode, let's do this collectively together. And we're going to have to do this after each of my shares. But just like, I have to trust that I was doing the best with what I knew at the time. And those quote unquote mistakes, those were guiding me to learn better, to know better, and to do better in the future. It's like I said, the mess being the message. So it's like those things taking me to the next level and the next expression of my work, because that's exactly what it did. If you're a woman who makes money or wants to make more of it, but still feels overwhelmed, disconnected, or unsure how to actually lead your finances, I created Magical Women in Money just for you. MWMM is where money meets self-trust, strategy meets intuition, and women stop outsourcing their financial power. Inside, I teach you how to organize your finances, understand your faulty money habits, align your earning with your astrology, and build a real wealth for your future without shame, pressure, or feeling like you're behind. This is a personal finance meets astrology method that works. It's grounded, empowering money work for women that feels approachable and soulful. Join the waitlist for Magical Women in Money membership, MWMM. The link is in the show notes. Because I think so often that is such a cultural belief that, more money is just going to solve everything. But I'm sure you've heard this, and this is something that's talked about. I can't remember the author's name right now, but The Psychology of Money. That is a very, very powerful book. Oh my God, it's Morgan something. I'm spacing on the name, but he essentially talks about the plight of a lot of lottery winners. And this isn't everybody, but when you're given a windfall and you don't have the systems and organization in place, and I have done this myself where I've gotten money that just came a little too easily. And that's another thing that anchored me in to the next level of what it is that I'm here to learn. Money structure. And I have a belief, my loves, in investing specifically, and we'll talk about this. But I also have a belief, my honey bunnies, that if you win the lottery or if you get any form of windfall, it should be mandatory for you to take some kind of personal finance course and for it to work on both, like come into MWMM if you win the lottery, because we're going to teach you both the energetic, emotional side of your relationship to money, the subconscious approach to your finances and astrological, but then also the personal finance, which gives you a system to be rooted in structure and organization, because more money won't solve money problems. You have to be intentional about building wealth and creating your future vision of having stability and abundance. That is not just going to fall in your lap. You have to be strategic and thoughtful about the money that you're given. So that's really what I've learned. Thinking making more money would solve my money problems. No. Structure, moderation, having a system for my money, and paying myself while also taking care to be highly organized. That is actually what solves money problems. So number 2, spending money on depreciating assets before building appreciating assets. I am so embarrassed to tell you this story. Oh God, I'm gonna cry, but I'm going to tell you. So something I have done, and I have done it twice. Two times, Ariesville happening right here. And I did it during a Venus retrograde 2 times. Slightly, lovingly embarrassing. I bought a depreciating asset before having appreciating assets. A depreciating asset is a luxury vehicle. I bought a car. I did it 2 times, 2 different times, because I thought that this car particularly was going to say something about what I had done and what it is that I had created. The last time that I did it was last year, right after I got divorced. I bought this car. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. I bought this car and I did not look at the deal. I did not look at the interest rate. I did it very, very chaotically. So chaos and impulsivity came up again in my relationship with money. And I thought that having this car would give me a feeling, it would make me feel like I had made it. And really all that it did, especially when I started to ground and get into my grief healing last year around my divorce, around my dad, et cetera, and just start to deal with my challenging emotions, I actually felt more like an imposter, because what I realized was that nothing external can make me feel good about myself. I can have amazing clothes. I can have a great car, but if it's rooted in flashy show off shit and it's not rooted in a healthy anchored place, then it doesn't feel good to me personally. And I've had to learn that 2 different times. Something I've also seen with myself and with women that I've supported is that we get this money and we want to then spend on stuff. We want to spend on stuff that we were never able to spend when we were having $150 weeks in our 20s. I wanted to spend on something that I felt said something about me. And that is hard to admit, because you know what? The sad thing that can sometimes happen in our culture too is the shaming. Like, there's such a power in vulnerability, but I think sometimes why people can struggle to be, and I know why I can struggle to be honest at times about things that I've done that I feel shame around, is because I get afraid that someone will shame me. And yet the funny thing is so often no one shames us as harshly as we shame ourselves. If anything, what I found in being vulnerable and being someone who's been really open about her life for many, many moons, and very just forward facing, I really found that in my vulnerability, it's actually created connection, like Brene Brown talks about. And again, my prayer in sharing something like this is that you guys are like, tell us what freaking car it was. You're like, get to it. Okay. But anyhow, it's really shown me that when I'm honest and open, there is so much power and magic and connectivity in that. So here's what I did 2 times during a Venus retrograde, doubly lovingly embarrassing because I'm an astrologer. You would have thought I'd make better choices. I literally purchased a G-Wagon 2 different times during a Venus retrograde. And then within 3 to 6 months, realized this is an absolutely ridiculous purchase that I'm frankly not ready to handle right now. Also, I have decided for myself, I am no longer purchasing cars unless I have the full-fledged money from compound interest, not from business revenue, but from actual money that I've built through investments over time or selling a business. And there's actual, like, my nest egg is taken care of, my appreciating assets, which I consider the business to be an appreciating asset in certain seasons, and then also investments to be appreciating assets. When those are healthy and well, and there is surplus cash, those need to be healthy and well for me to ever purchase a car ever again. Because guess what? Purchasing a depreciating asset like a car and then owning the car, not leasing it. I lease my car now. I lease an Audi. This is like the 5th Audi that I've had. I love my car so much. But what I have learned, and here's what's crazy actually, after I got the G-Wagon, I will tell you about this. But what's really freaking powerful is that at the end of the day, getting into something that just feels like it aligns and respects my finances feels so much sexier than driving a car. And this is just my experience, but driving a car that I felt said something about me, but I didn't feel anchored and rooted in these other parts of my relationship to money. But here's the thing too, the gift of this, I'm like, this is so hard to talk about, but I'm doing it. I'm just letting it rip. And I really, again, especially my loves, because my vision for you is when you start making money, you make healthy choices and you spend on things that you care about, but you don't take business revenue to, or like surplus cash that you've gotten and put it into something that you're just going to have to spend more money on. Because that's the thought that I wanted to finish about the depreciating asset, is that I finally realized, oh, I own this car. So anything happens to this gorgeous vehicle that is very, very expensive to take care of, I am taking care of that. And when I really sat down and did my numbers and I landed from the divorce, I was like, this is silly goose. Like, this is not healthy. This was not a healthy choice. This was like a pleasure choice in the moment, which those can be lovely. But when I really got down to the numbers and I really got down to what makes sense for me in this season of my life, that was silly goose move. And then when I took a look at the deal, I saw that I was paying $1,000 in interest just on the car deal alone for the amount that I didn't put cash down. So what I ended up doing, well, here's the thing I want to tell you about the dream. So not long after that, I had a dream. And the dream was I was driving the G-Wagon in a parking lot and I kept trying to like put my foot on the gas and the gas pedal wouldn't go. So I kept trying to put my foot on the gas, put my foot on the gas, and just nothing would happen. And then I got out of the car and there was a man in the parking lot who handed me a check and then got me into an Audi. Well, when I realized that it was time to sell the G-Wagon, the amount of for the check that I received was the exact amount for the check that I saw in my dream. And I wasn't planning on getting an Audi again. I was looking at other car leases. I was considering, I test drove a Porsche Macan, but I didn't like it as much. And it worked with my numbers, it worked with my budget. But then baby girl Audi just came back my way. And you guys, this is actually something I've never really spoken about, but as an Aries, and I'm just not afraid to admit this, I love cars. My Papa Bear loved cars, and I have raced cars before on a racetrack. Don't worry. I don't really drive very fast, honestly, every so often, but I'm very careful. Everyone says they're a good driver. I think there was like a poll that said like 90% of people say they're a good driver. I do feel, God willing, knock on wood somewhere, that I am a safe driver. But I have raced cars before, and I was laughing because I was like, this is the most Aries thing to be good at. Like, I was weirdly good at it. And I just love cars. I've always appreciated cars. And when I was in my 20s and very broke and driving my cute little Mini Cooper, that thing could have never been a getaway car. I would literally slam my foot on the gas to accelerate onto the freeway, and it would like literally, the acceleration took like a solid 2 minutes. And that is not an exaggeration. But I used to visualize, like, I would hold my hand to the steering wheel of the Mini and I would see an Audi emblem. Like, I was like, I just knew I wanted an Audi. I loved them every time I'd see them. And now it's so beautiful because the season of business that I'm in, the revenue that we generate, it makes sense for me to have that car, but it does not make financial sense for me to have a G-Wagon. It doesn't make financial sense for me to own a car at this season of my life. It does make financial sense for me to lease a car. And frankly, as a woman, I like leasing cars because they take care. I always make sure that I get into a lease where they cover the care, because I don't want to be taking care of a car, and I don't want to have to be figuring out through the money that I'm generating that could actually be going into the business or going into my future investments. I don't want that going into repairing the G-Wagon, to going into it's just not the season of life that I'm in particularly. So spending money on depreciating assets before building appreciating assets. So what I've learned is that yes, we can celebrate our successes, but we have to build the foundation first. So I'll put that in the I statement. I have learned the hard way 2 times during Venus retrogrades that it is important for me to build the true financial foundation before going and spending excess cash on something like a depreciating asset that's just going to cost me more money. And I have actually seen this a lot in my work. I've seen it a lot with angels and MWMM. They get a windfall, they buy something that they then have to take care of. And I think what this also has taught me is getting my priorities in line of what is important to me and how I want to feel with money, both today and tomorrow. And while it is important to enjoy the finer things in life, if that's important to you, but I also think through my experience that it's because I think that's such a gift. Like, it is nice. It is a lovely, beautiful thing. Every time I write my gratitude list, I always say thank you for my car because it feels good. And I know what it's like to not drive a nice car. When I was also in my early 20s, my mom and dad gave me the handed down Volkswagen Passat, and the air conditioning didn't work. And I had to drive through LA all the time with the windows down, especially in the summer. Obviously, LA, it has nice weather, but even then, I lived on the east side. It was very warm certain days. I also didn't have an AC in my apartment, and that I just felt like I was living outside at all times. So that was always something that I knew that I wanted. I was like, I know that. And I would visualize, I'd be like, I know I want a great car. But again, like I talked about in my dating episode, bringing God into all of these purchases, like bringing God into big financial decisions. So instead of doing things from my ego, like, is this going to validate my worth externally, which nothing can really do that. But I know that there are things externally that can expand my experience of fulfillment, joy, and peace. And I wrote a letter. Something that we learn in recovery is you write, it's called two-way prayer. And what you do is you write a letter to higher power and you lay down all your fears. And then you say, God, take my pen. And then you let God write through you, and you write a letter back to yourself through the consciousness of your higher power. And it's so interesting because I had asked God how I make better decisions in this area. And God, when I was writing the letter back from God, the message that I received was that the decision that brings you the most peace is the right decision for you. And that really meant a lot because I've made a lot of decisions, especially let's say around the GGs. I used to call them GGs, my GGs, especially around my GGs, my G Wagons. I made decisions from a place of heightened intensity. And I made decisions from those places of not dealing with internal dissidence of whatever was going on in my life at the time. Because the first time I bought the G Wagon, I was very internally unfulfilled in the season that my relationship was in, but I was unwilling to leave and I was unwilling to really look at it. And then when I got divorced, I was again unwilling to look at the internal dissonance I was having in the form of grief and the form of, fear of where I was going in my life after having such a big upset. So celebrating my success feels beautiful, but most importantly, the foundation of my finances is what is more important to me now. And it's taken two decisions to really learn that. And yeah, so deep breath. I've alluded to that a couple of times, but I've never just point blank said what it was. So that's a big one. So this is number 3, avoiding my finances when they felt uncomfortable. So avoidance is very, very expensive. Financial peace comes from paying attention. So and this is something that I harp on in MWMM literally all the time, and it's so powerful. But very, very simply, I talk to my girlies pretty much every Q&A that we have. We do weekly Q&As and coaching. But I talk to them almost every week about working their step 2, which is creating their money date, having their personal finance tools down pat through the money date. I used to have such a disassociated relationship with money, as you've heard. And what I really got to anchor in on and learn about myself and for myself is that over time, when I built my money system, which is my spreadsheets, I now savor being with my money. If I'm having a money problem or something that I am feeling stress around, I know that all that I need to do is sit down and have a money date. I know that all that really needs to happen is I just need to get clear and focus on the problem at hand. And I have a wonderful system and exquisite tools in my pocket through all the mistakes that I've made. Points at computer screen. All the mistakes that I've made, that's given me these things, but I've chosen to learn them. And I think what can happen so often is that women, we can avoid things that feel chaotic. And that is really, I don't really know what to call it in terms of our feminine expression, but that can really come by way. And it's even the unhealthy feminine is the way that I interpret it, because it's almost like the masculine part of our polarity is what is there to create structure. And when we're resistant to structure, we are in essence resistant to the aspect of our healthy masculine. And when that healthy masculine structure isn't there and things are in chaos, then we don't want to approach it. Like I know for myself, when there wasn't much money in my bank account or when I was in financial chaos, the last thing that I wanted to do was open my bank account. The last thing that I wanted to do was figure things out. It didn't feel like there was anywhere for things to land. And personally, that is why I'm so passionate about this work and so passionate about women learning healthy financial tools, personal finance specifically, because when we have a healthy relationship to money, an organized relationship to money, a structure, what I have learned is that then I want to approach and be with my money. And now it's one of my favorite things, even if there are seasons or moments where I don't like what I see. I just had to pay a huge tax bill yesterday. And I was like, oh man, it is not fun to see my tax account go from all the money I'd aggregated into it to now, off to the IRS. But it's beautiful because the mindset shift that I have is like, well, I know that I have a structure and a system through generating through my work where that account will grow again. And also, then I'm learning. And this is something I'll talk about more when I feel like I have a better handle on it. But I'm also in a season where I am, and I love this and I'm very proud of this for myself, but I'm also in a season where I am learning how to essentially have a healthier relationship to investing and a healthier relationship to like tax saving strategies. This is not something that my beginner self, like when I was 31 figuring out money, this is not anything that I would be talking about or even thinking about. This is the cool thing where when we stop avoiding our finances and we learn the tools and we get organized, it's actually gets fun because it's almost like you're going to the next level of a game and you're playing a game because money essentially, my loves, it is a game and it is also a very emotional game. And we have to also, what I found, master the emotions. Like in my number two mistake with the G Wagons and the spending on depreciating assets, what were those? Those were emotional decisions. Those are decisions based on avoiding something and then thinking that this big purchase would get rid of the dissidence, the internal dissidence that I was having emotionally. Didn't work, doesn't work, never works. If you're standing at the edge of a major life, money, or business transition, and you know the next chapter requires a different level of support, this may be your moment to work with me one-to-one. There are two ways to do that. The first is my year-long total life transformation mentorship, a deeply supported journey where we work on your money, your vitality, and your visibility so the growth you create is embodied and sustainable. The second is my signature one-to-one money and business mentoring, focused strategic support to help you stabilize, grow, and lead your finances and business with clarity and confidence. Both are for women who value refinement and are ready to build a life and business with intention, time spaciousness, and depth. If you feel the call to work with me one-to-one, the application is waiting for you in the show notes. So getting out of avoidance and really looking at what is here in my money, what isn't working in my money, like something that I'm really working on right now. And it's a worthwhile game and pursuit to me because I'm so passionate about what it is that I'm doing, but it's scaling the business's revenue while not scaling so much of my intense effort and time like I did in an earlier season of my business. And the only way to be able to do that from my perspective is to know what the numbers are and to be patient and also healthfully, courageously risk taking. And I say healthy risk taking because an unhealthy risk was buying the G Wagon. A healthy risk for me at this stage of my work and my business is literally like being seen more, like teaching more. And I will tell you, I feel very safe and good talking about money through my podcast. I always have, frankly. Talking about money on Instagram has been harder for me. And I'm figuring out why that is. And yet I don't really have to know why that is, to be honest, because I think that what a lot of us can do is we want to figure out the why and then we'll do the thing when really that's just a remarkable way to like, I think it's kind of fascinating, but it's almost like a really remarkable way just to kick the can down the road. Like, I think it's just self-sabotage in disguise. So I know internally what the thing is that is keeping me caught. And for me, it is visibility and it is being more forward facing about what it is that I can teach around money. Like I said, I feel good doing it here, but sometimes on the pod I can, or on the on Instagram, I can get a little more caught up. But looking at my numbers, getting honest about where the business is, I know what it's going to take. And then there's also some things that I don't know. And that's also healthy risk because you also, in your business, in your earning capacity, in your purpose, and what you're here to do, you are not always going to have every A to Z answer. And I see women do that a lot. I think that's one thing in having like an Aries constitution is I don't do that as much. I'm definitely a little bit more like I'm going to start with A and figure out B and then I'll figure out C. But trying to have the whole pathway laid out, I just know again that that is like self sabotage in disguise. So, what are you avoiding right now, my love? What is feeling like the big overarching thing where you're just like, I know, and I think, dare I say, I feel like we do know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, my loves. Like, do you feel like you know? I feel like we know what it takes. And sometimes we're just genuinely like afraid of the answer. Like, we're just like afraid of actually what it's going to take. But I know that if you are willing to look at what is actually going on in your money, you will be able, you are highly capable of making the changes. I wasn't able to change anything in my finances until I finally recognized that I was just sick and tired of being broke. And I was sick and tired of living in self imposed financial chaos and deprivation through that chaos. So I was like, well, what do I need to learn? And for me personally, my angels, I don't see myself as like, oh, I've always been naturally good at money. No, I taught myself how to be good with money. I taught myself how to be more precise. And I still have things to learn and I still have ways and means that I'm growing. Just like any relationship, your relationship with money is a relationship. If you avoid it, it gets expensive. If you avoid it, those problems just compound. But if you're willing to look at what's going on, pay attention, get organized, learn these tools, and not be a perfectionist about it, you will experience a financial peace and a serenity with money that you maybe have never experienced before, that I know you have never experienced before, especially if this one rings really, really true for you. And so that has really been a big one for me. When I've avoided money, there's also been seasons where just going back to even my number one mistake, thinking more money would solve my money problems, where I was making a lot of money. I was making more money than I'm making now, but I was in that self-imposed chaos and I didn't have anywhere for money to land, which made me avoid what was going on. I just thought, I'll just keep generating. I'll just keep generating. I have high cash months. Everything will be fine. But really learning the tools of money and most of all, learning the tools of wealth. Ramit Sethi is one of my favorite money teachers. He has a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's a very, very amazing, approachable financial acumen book, personal finance book. And I heard him on a podcast episode once literally say that the majority of millionaires, they did not make their money overnight. They made their money through conscious decisions over time, generating money and then doing something with that money. And what a lot of people don't tell you about money is that the way to wealth, which is actually a lot of millionaires, there's actually a book called The Millionaire Next Door. I read a little bit of that book. It wasn't totally for me, but I thought it was a very, very brilliant and very popular book. I think it's from the 90s. But in that book, he literally talks about how most American millionaires are teachers, people who do not have high incomes, but actually just made concerted efforts with the income that they did have and that they did make. And a lot of people don't tell you that, babes. The glitzy, glammy stuff that we see online so often is like, sell a company or like have 7-figure months in your coaching business or what the frick ever. no, let's personally, and at least if you're with me, this is what I'm going to teach you. If you want to learn something else, then I respect that. But what I'm going to guide you on is the middle way, because through these mistakes, through this chaos that I've created in my life over the years and in different seasons of my work and different seasons of my relationship to money, I have learned through that chaos and through those mistakes what I actually needed. And what I needed was the middle way. And the middle way is organized. The middle way is structured. The middle way is emotionally healthy. The middle way has the God of my understanding in it. The middle way is honest. And the middle way is having delayed gratification, not needing everything right this moment to fill a void that can only be filled through not only a healthy relationship to your version of God, but also a healthy relationship to yourself and to the emotions that you don't want to deal with, that you think money or a business or a career or something will fill. So that is what my 3 money mistakes have taught me. And I hope that they show you that no matter where you are in your earning, no matter where you're at, that approaching money from a healthy place as early on as you can. Like, I would rather you do the opposite of me, where you maybe don't have a lot of money now, but you're teaching yourself how to earn and you're learning, let's say, my system. And I teach this in MWMM. You're learning my system and you're building your financial picture with my system in place, with healthy personal finance in place wherever you learn it. And then you're growing and showing yourself that you can hold more versus what happened with me, where I had this huge amount of income from having basically making nothing and then stepping into like a lot of money and then having to learn this stuff after the fact. And then looking back and being like, crap, if I knew this and did this sooner, I'd be in a really wonderful position. But again, and I'm in a wonderful position. So thank you, God. I'm very grateful. And yet, that is the parts of my journey with money that I have to forgive myself with, that through these experiences and some of these things that I can still hold shame around, that I was still learning and I'm learning and getting better. And being organized for me, my loves, it also helps me to be more generous, to be less in my own head about what I'm doing, what needs that I want met, but rather like, how am I being generous with my time? And how am I being like feeling financially healthy is one of the most beautiful things. Feeling wealthy, feeling rich, whatever it means to you, whatever word works for you, feeling healthy, wealthy, rich, stable, it is a natural outpouring of generosity. And that's in when someone has a healthy relationship with money, because you can be a millionaire, billionaire. And if you don't have a healthy relationship with money and nothing ever feels like enough, you're not going to be generous. But if you have a healthy relationship to money, whether you have very little or you're a millionaire, billionaire, or a 6-figurenaire, if you have a healthy relationship to money and you trust yourself to generate and you trust that something bigger has you, then you're going to be naturally generous, whether it's with your time, your resources, or both. I love you. I would love to hear from you angels, how this landed. This was a big one. This is a very strong episode. I think our original tarot pull really rang true. I also pulled the death card, which represents like ego death. And then I pulled the Dominion card, which is Mars and Aries, which is like taking command and control of a situation. So I invite you, my loves, forgive yourself. Look at maybe 1 or 3 mistakes that you've made with your finances. Go into the breath that we did and then make the commitment. If you have a money problem that you don't know what to do with right now, then write it down rigorously, honestly on a piece of paper, and then write down the solution to that money problem. And then once you write down the solution, write down 5 attributing action steps. This is something that I just did with my babes in the mid-year masterclass. So write down the money problem, write down the solution that you're aware of in the moment, and then the 5 action steps that would help you bring that solution to life. Okay. Now, this September, I am opening the doors to the Revenue Room. This is a year-long mentorship for women who already have a business, but know that they're leaving money on the table. Together, we're going to simplify your offers, build a clear customer journey, and create a business that generates more consistent revenue so you're no longer wondering what to sell next. There are only going to be 9 spaces available. If you'd like to work closely with me over the next year, I'd love to invite you to join the wait list. So for the Revenue Room, you are going to have 1 year access to Magical Women in Money, my personal finance and astrology membership. You are going to have 4 quarterly strategy coaching sessions with me and 4 quarterly mastermind sessions with the other soul-led entrepreneurs inside of the Revenue Room. So there will be more information for you on the wait list. If that speaks to you, I would love, love, love to work with you more closely and support you in your business. And also, I will say in my human design, I'm a 1-3 manifesting generator. And this also gave me a lot of relief when I learned this about myself, that I'm actually here to learn through experience and learn through the contrast of my mistakes, which is also very Aries. And what I've also found is I'm such a powerful mentor because I save my students, my clients, and my members so much time because you don't have to go through the actual hitting your head like the ram does against the proverbial wall to learn the harsh lesson. My Capricorn rising has built a system for you to support you and not needing to go through the hard roundabout way of learning, but rather learning through someone else's journey and someone else's mistakes. I love you guys. This was a potent episode to share. And I really hope that you were able to take something from it and learn through my journey. And this was also a really big honor. I was a little nervous to record this, but honestly, I'm so, so happy that I did. It actually feels really empowering to share all of this and really in the prayer and the intention that this serves and supports your relationship with money and your unfolding and ever up leveling relationship with your finances, which is the way that I look at my relationship with money. It's not a perfect relationship, but it is one that I love, that I'm willing to grow through and evolve through and learn from mistakes and turn them into really empowering results, which is exactly what I've done and I will continue to do. I love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.